Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Business Incorporated. I am Busin Amafaye. We are live to you from Channel's global headquarters. Now, let's start the program. Coming up, Germany's unemployment rate falls to 6.3% in November. That's the lowest level since the unification of East and West Germany 25 years ago. And France is set to invest $16 billion in renewable energies and the electrification of Africa. Plus, Brazil's economy is in recession, down 1.7% in the third quarter and deepening its worst growth in a quarter of a century. Let's start from Germany, the largest economy in Europe, where the unemployment rate fell to 6.3% last month, the lowest level since the unification in 1990, reinforcing expectations that private consumption will continue to support growth in Europe's biggest economy. The seasonally adjusted unemployment total fell last month by a stronger than expected 13,000 to 2.772 million. The data came after a bout of weakness during the summer, driven by slowdown in China and other emerging markets, raising questions about the strength of exports and the broader economy. Data released on Monday showed monthly retail sales slipping, but that reading is notoriously volatile, and other figures have pointed to private consumption holding up in the final quarter of 2015, with inflation remaining low and a survey showing Germans becoming more willing to buy in the holiday season. Now, it's been a very busy day across the global markets today. In Asia, stocks finished positive on expectations of stimulus from Beijing, sidestepping the negative U.S. manufacturing data and new orders on Monday. Today in Europe, the countdown has started for the final 24 hours to the interest rate decisions of the European Central Bank. Meanwhile, the troubled German automaker Volkswagen today briefs workers on the long-term implications of its multi-billion-dollar diesel cheating scandal. Also in the headlines, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, is expected to release a new report on Iran's nuclear deal. Oil prices fall ahead of that report as traders expect a supply glut in the market, even as OPEC meet this Friday. So much to talk about at the marketplace. So let's bring on Conrad Bosen, DWTV financial correspondent for Channels TV, live at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Welcome to the program, Conrad. Let's get started. Big story today from Volkswagen as the chairman briefed the workers on the long-term impact of the diesel emission scandal. How has the market in Frankfurt reacted to this briefing today?
Well, Bosun, the share price of Volkswagen is down around about 3% today, but we have to see that in light of the around about 30% gain that these shares had made before today's decline. The 30% increase happened since mid-November. So I can say in general terms, many optimists are there out on the markets believing that Volkswagen will eventually be able to cope with the scandal. But today's downswing also speaks a clear language. Some investors are not very happy with the time frame that Volkswagen's CEO Müller gave today. He said that he hopes that the company will be able to cope with the consequences of the scandal by the end of next year. But he also said that compensation and customer legal proceedings would likely drag on for years. That sounds pretty negative, pretty obscure, and it doesn't make it easier to really calculate the financial impact of the scandal in the long run. What's more, today people here in Frankfurt are talking about a loan that Volkswagen is negotiating with several banks. It's said to be a loan of around about 20 billion euros. That makes people here discuss now, does Volkswagen really need that much money for the consequences of the crisis, or is this loan probably just a clever way of Volkswagen to finance its current operations? What we can say is that it's very difficult for Volkswagen at the moment to get financing through bonds because the rating of Volkswagen has been lowered several times by rating agencies.
Yeah, Conrad, does the German index adjust across your shoulder, heading south as we speak? Now, all these 24 hours to the ECB rates decision, Mario Draghi, talk to us about some of these issues ahead of tomorrow. The latest Eurozone inflation, well, quite positive. The German data also positive as we speak. However, across the Atlantic, the U.S. Fed Chairman Janet Yellen is speaking today on the general market condition. Talk to us. We're now in the final 24 hours before we hear from Mario Draghi and the rest of his team in Brussels.
I think that the graph that you see right behind me, right over my shoulder, shows quite obviously how nervous investors are ahead of all these events. And let's take a closer look at this graph. What you can see here is an upswing this morning at around about 11 o'clock. And this happened right after the latest inflation data from the Eurozone came in. Consumer price inflation in November rose by only 0.1%. That's less than what economists had forecast. And it is also far less than what the European Central Bank considers to be price stability. So this negative, or that very low consumer price inflation, of course makes the speculation on further monetary stimulus from the central bank more likely, and that's why this positive reaction happened. But then the optimism went away quite quickly, and let me link that to the other event of today. You mentioned Janet Yellen is going to speak tonight in Washington, tonight of course, meaning Lagos time or Frankfurt time, and it's of course not clear what Yellen has to say. Will the Fed chairwoman announce an increase of interest rates in the United States soon, maybe as early as December? And if so, what will the consequences be for the markets? That's what makes investors nervous at the moment. It will be very exciting to see the reaction on the markets. Of course, we will only be able to talk to them about them tomorrow.
Very interesting. But just before that, a very negative day for energy prices, crude oil to be more specific. U.S. crude about 1 2/10% in the red today. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency is expected to release a new report on Iran's nuclear deal. Is this report and the crude prices part of the trading theme for investors in your market?
Well, it is a topic of interest for traders. Maybe not so much here in Frankfurt, where not much oil is being traded, but it is very important given the general political picture right now. Iran is becoming a very important country, especially because of the conflict in Syria, and every piece of news that points towards more cooperation, less confrontation between Iran and the West would be a positive piece of information for economy. And let's not forget that several sanctions are still into place against Iran. So if this report points towards a more peaceful relation and less concentration on the past, of course sanctions will be lifted, and that means more business opportunities also for companies here in Germany and in Europe.
Okay, let's leave it at that for today. Conrad, we have a lot to chew between tomorrow and the rest of the week, and of course the biggest news on next week from Brussels with the ECB. Thank you very much, my colleague at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, DWTV for Channels Television, Conrad Boson. Now, France has pledged about $16 billion for energy in Africa. How should that money be spent? We've got the CEO of Allianz Global Strategy to talk to us here. She is joining us live in the studio in about 2 minutes. Stick around.